You're standing on a beach at the very edge of the known world. Behind you is everything, your people, your land, every place you have ever walked. In front of you is the sea, not a river you can wade across, not a lake you can see the other side of. The open ocean, stretching all the way to the horizon and beyond, into pure blue nothing. And here's the impossible part. Somewhere out there, past the curve of the earth, past the point where the water swallows the sky, there is land you cannot even see. You don't know it's there. You can't know it's there. And yet somehow, you're going to get in a boat, point yourself at the empty horizon, and go. This actually happened. Not once, but many times, all over the world. Long before maps, before compasses, before anyone knew the shape of the planet, ancient humans looked at the open ocean, the single most hostile environment on Earth for a land animal, and crossed it anyway. How? How did people with no metal, no writing, and no idea what was on the other side conquer the sea? The answer is one of the most underrated achievements in human history, and it's a story of courage that borders on madness. Let's be honest about what the ocean is to a human being. We are a land animal, through and through. We can't breathe in water. We can't swim for more than a short distance before exhaustion drags us under. We can't drink the water around us. It'll kill us faster than drinking nothing at all. The open sea offers no food you can easily reach, no shelter, no fresh water, and no ground to stand on. For most of the animal kingdom, a wide stretch of ocean is an absolute permanent wall. It's the reason islands develop their own bizarre, isolated species, because almost nothing can cross. For nearly every creature on Earth, deep water means this is the end of your world. You go no further. And yet, humans did. Which means that at some point, our ancestors looked at the one barrier that stops almost every other animal cold and figured out how to turn it into a highway. That leap didn't happen because it was safe. It happened because something drove them to try, and the very first attempts must have been absolutely terrifying. Here's a fact that genuinely stuns most people when they first hear it. Humans reached Australia at least 50,000 years ago, possibly earlier. Now that might not sound remarkable until you understand the geography. Even during the ice ages, when sea levels were far lower and much more land was exposed, you could not walk to Australia. No matter how the coastlines shifted, there was always open sea in the way, long stretches of deep water that had to be crossed by boat. Some of those crossings were dozens of miles of open ocean, with the destination completely invisible from the starting shore. Think about what that means. 50,000 years ago, tens of thousands of years before farming, before the wheel, before writing, before anything we'd call civilization, human beings built watercraft seaworthy enough to carry groups of people across open ocean to a continent they could not see and did not know existed. This wasn't one lucky raft blown off course. To establish a lasting population in Australia, you need many people to make it, men, women, enough to build a community and keep it going for generations. That means this was, in some sense, deliberate, repeated, a sustained effort to cross the sea and settle the far side. It is one of the oldest pieces of hard evidence we have that ancient humans were not primitive at all. They were bold, capable, ocean-going explorers. So here's a frustrating mystery. We know they crossed the ocean, but we have almost no idea what they crossed it in. The problem is simple and maddening. The sea destroys evidence. Ancient boats were made from wood, bamboo, reeds, vines, and animal skins. Organic materials that rot away in years, not millennia. A stone tool can survive for 1,000,000 years in the ground. A raft made of lashed together bamboo leaves nothing behind it all. So the very vessels that carried humanity across the oceans have almost entirely vanished from the record. But we can make very good guesses. The most likely candidates were rafts, bundles of bamboo or logs lashed tightly together, which are remarkably stable and nearly unsinkable. Bamboo is a near-perfect material. It's light, it floats, it's strong, and in many places it grew in abundance right by the coast. Add a simple paddle or a woven sail to catch the wind, and you have a vessel that a skilled group could use to cross surprising distances. Others may have used dugout canoes, entire tree trunks, hollowed out by burning and scraping, a technique that takes enormous patience but produces a sturdy, watertight boat. The key insight is this: you don't need metal or nails to build a seaworthy craft. You need the right plant material, strong cordage to bind it, and a deep understanding of how it all behaves in the water. Ancient humans had all three, but building a boat is the easy part. Here's the real question. Once you paddle out past the sight of land, into an ocean that looks identical in every direction, how on earth do you find your way? How do you not just drift forever and die? This is where ancient seafarers reveal a genius that is almost hard to believe, because they developed ways of navigating the open ocean with no instruments at all, reading the world itself as a map. They watched the stars. Specific stars rise and set at specific points on the horizon, and they do it reliably, night after night. A skilled navigator memorized the paths of dozens of stars and could hold a course through the darkness by steering toward one star, then the next, as it climbed too high in an endless chain across the sky. The heavens became a compass. By day, they read the sun, the winds, and the direction of the ocean swells, the deep, steady waves that roll across the sea in consistent patterns. An experienced navigator could feel the rhythm of the swells against the hull, even lying down in the boat with their eyes closed, and know exactly which way they were heading. And they read the signs of unseen land, a certain type of bird that flies out to sea to fish in the morning and returns to land at night. Follow it in the evening, and it leads you home. Cloud formations that gather over islands, the greenish tint reflected onto the underside of clouds by a shallow lagoon, floating vegetation, the way ocean swells bend and bounce off a landmass far over the horizon, creating patterns a trained navigator could feel. To them, the empty ocean was covered in signposts. They just knew how to read a language the rest of us have forgotten. If you want to see just how far this could go, look at what happened in the Pacific Ocean, the single greatest feat of navigation in human history before the modern age. The Pacific is almost unimaginably vast. It covers a third of the entire planet. Scattered across it are tiny specks of land, islands separated by hundreds, sometimes thousands, of miles of open water. And yet, ancient seafaring peoples found them, not by accident, but deliberately, settling island after island across an ocean so enormous it defies comprehension. They did it in large double-hulled canoes, two hulls lashed together for incredible stability, capable of carrying not just people, but everything needed to start a new colony: food, water, plants to grow, and animals to breed. These were ocean-going vessels, purpose-built for voyages that could last weeks on the open sea, with no land in sight for the entire journey. Think about the confidence that required to load your family, your food, and your future onto a canoe and sail deliberately into the open Pacific, trusting that your navigator could find a target smaller than a grain of sand on a football field, using only the stars, the swells, and the birds. And they were right, again and again. They colonized the most remote islands on Earth, thousands of miles from anywhere, all without a single instrument. It is quite simply one of the most astonishing things our species has ever done. Which brings us to the question that haunts this entire story. Why? Why would anyone get into a fragile boat and sail toward an empty horizon, risking everything for land they couldn't even be sure existed? Sometimes, the answer was survival. A growing population strains its resources. If your island or your coast can no longer feed everyone, the pressure to find somewhere new becomes immense. The sea, terrifying as it is, might be the only way out. Sometimes it was disaster, a storm, a conflict, a famine, a group forced off their land with nowhere to go but the water, and sometimes a fishing party or a boat simply got caught in a storm, blown far out to sea and, against all odds, washed up somewhere new and lived to tell the tale, proving that there was something out there. But we shouldn't ignore the simplest and most human reason of all: curiosity, the pure, restless desire to know what's over the horizon. Humans are the animal that has to look around the next corner, climb the next hill, cross the next river, just to see. Somewhere out there was a person who stood on that beach, looked at the endless sea, and felt not just fear, but a pull, a need to know. And that need has always been one of the most powerful forces in our species. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. Humans refused to accept that the ocean was the edge of their world. Step back and take in the whole picture, and something remarkable comes into focus. We tend to think of the great age of exploration as something that happened just a few centuries ago. Wooden ships, maps, famous captains crossing the seas. But the truth is that the real ocean pioneers came tens of thousands of years earlier. People with no metal, no writing, and no idea of the size or shape of the planet did something those later explorers, with all their equipment, would have found almost impossible. They crossed vast open ocean into the complete unknown, guided by nothing but the sky, the water, and their own extraordinary skill. They had no safety net, no rescue, no way to call for help. No map to check, no guarantee of anything on the other side. If they were wrong, they simply vanished into the blue, and no one ever knew what happened to them. Every successful crossing was a gamble with their lives, made on courage and knowledge alone. And enough of those gambles paid off that humans spread across islands and continents that should have been forever out of reach. The people living on those far shores today are the descendants of the ones who made it. Every island nation, every remote coast is proof of an ancestor who once looked at the impossible and decided to try anyway. So picture that person one final time. Standing on the beach at the edge of the world, the boat ready, the family waiting, the horizon empty and endless and unknowable. They can't see what's out there. They have no proof anything is. Everything they know says the sea is death. And yet, they push the boat into the surf, climb aboard, and paddle away from the only world they've ever known, toward a horizon that promises nothing but blue. That took a kind of courage most of us will never have to summon. Not the courage of a single desperate moment, but the slow, sustained bravery of days and weeks on the open sea, trusting the stars and the swells and the birds, with everything you love riding on your skill and your nerve. We cross the oceans because we are the animal that cannot stop asking what's out there. That restless, reckless, magnificent curiosity carried tiny boats across the widest waters on Earth, tens of thousands of years before anyone thought it was possible. The next time you look out at the sea and feel that small pull toward the horizon, that's them. That's the same instinct that carried your ancestors across the water and into the unknown. It's been with us all along. We were always going to cross. We just had to be brave enough to push off from the shore.